If you want to survive in this world, you need to stop chasing approval and start becoming someone the system can't replace. Power today doesn't belong to the loudest person in the room. It belongs to the one who understands how to disappear, how to observe, how to build without broadcasting every step. And if Niccolo Machiavelli were alive today, he wouldn't be posting on TikTok, begging for attention, or pitching himself to brands. He wouldn't be fighting for likes. He would be mastering the one thing everyone else fears losing: silence. Because what they can see, they can target. What they can predict, they can control. What they can understand, they can dismantle. Machiavelli wouldn't be the face on the billboard or the CEO posing in interviews. He'd be the force behind the curtain, choosing which CEO gets crowned next. While everyone else believes they're improvising their way through life, he'd be the one quietly writing the script they never realized they were following. Today, chains aren't made of iron. They're made of perception, of data, of algorithms that track your every move, of your fear of being invisible or forgotten. The world doesn't drag you into a prison cell anymore. It drags you onto a public stage where people judge you, misunderstand you, project onto you, and manipulate the image you work so hard to maintain. And if you don't take control of that perception, then you're not playing the game. You're being played by it. This isn't about becoming evil. It's about survival. This video is your blueprint for understanding the mindset Machiavelli would use if he were navigating today's world. A world where visibility is a trap and silence is the last form of real power. If you've ever been underestimated, talked over, ignored, or quietly dismissed, then you already know what it feels like to be outside of the power circle. But if you're listening now, it means you're ready to step inside it. Don't follow because I sound intense. Follow because you're done being manipulated. So here's where we begin. Say nothing, just listen. Because in every game of power, the one who speaks less is the one no one sees coming. Let them forget your name. Let them overlook you in meetings. Let them misjudge you with that small smile that says you're harmless. Good. Let them believe that. Because the moment they stop watching you is the moment you start watching them. In a world addicted to attention, the most dangerous person is the one no one notices. The observer in the background who absorbs everything. Law 1. Use being overlooked as your advantage. Machiavelli wouldn't chase validation. He wouldn't fight for spotlight or recognition. He'd wear mediocrity like a cloak, letting everyone else reveal their weaknesses while assuming he had none. Let them measure you with lazy eyes. Let them underestimate you. Let them label you as soft, quiet, or irrelevant. Because the moment someone stops seeing you as a threat, they start revealing information they'd otherwise guard. And when people feel unwatched, they expose everything. Their ambitions, their insecurities, their alliances, their blind spots. Power doesn't come from announcing yourself. It comes from waiting. He wouldn't strike with anger. He'd strike with accuracy. Like a shadow that slowly grows teeth, he would move only when the entire room believes he's incapable of doing anything at all. Think about how often people talk freely around someone they assume isn't paying attention. That's your advantage. Camouflage is not cowardice. It's strategy. It gives you the space to study the game before you ever make a move. The loudest person loses because the loudest person exposes themselves. Power is not loud. Power listens. Power collects. Power waits. Machiavelli once wrote that the wise man does at the start what the fool does at the end. The fool rushes to be respected. The wise waits to be feared. So the next time someone interrupts you, don't fight for space. The next time they dismiss you, don't explain. The next time you're underestimated, don't react. Smile. Let them talk. Let them build the illusion. Because silence is not surrender. Silence is scaffolding. Every moment you don't respond is another layer of leverage being built beneath your feet. And when the moment comes, you won't need to shout. You'll just move. And they'll question how the quiet one became the one holding the entire structure together. Law 2. Treat charm as camouflage. Truth cuts deeply. It forces people to confront themselves, and most people avoid that at all costs. But charm is silk over a blade. It seduces. It comforts. It creates a soft glow that makes people ignore the shadows behind it. Machiavelli understood that most people don't want truth. They want to feel important. They want to be admired. They want someone who mirrors them, not someone who challenges them. So he wouldn't correct you when you're wrong. He wouldn't argue when you misunderstand. He'd smile, nod, tilt his head at exactly the right moment, and let you believe he agrees. Meanwhile, he'd be silently calculating the next 3 moves. Think about how often people were warned about someone, yet still felt drawn to them. That's charm. It lowers defenses. It creates the illusion of safety long before the danger appears. Machiavelli wouldn't enter a room armed with facts. He'd enter with presence. He wouldn't speak to be right. He'd speak to be remembered. He'd disarm you with a compliment, echo your thoughts back to you, and make you feel deeply understood. And in that warm haze of connection, your guard falls asleep. And that's when he gets exactly what he wants. This isn't manipulation in a cartoonish sense. This is gravity. People move toward what flatters them, not what challenges them. So ask yourself, are they loyal to who you truly are, or loyal to how you make them feel? In today's world, perception spreads faster than integrity. So stop wasting energy begging for understanding. Become what they want to see on the surface, while privately building what they will never suspect. Charm isn't about being liked. Charm is about being let inside the gate. And once you're in, you never need permission again. Have you ever trusted someone simply because they made you feel seen, only to realize later that they were studying you the whole time? Leave a mark in the comments if that happened to you, or keep it to yourself. Some lessons hit harder in silence. Law 3. Use ambiguity to stay unpredictable. Clarity is comforting. When people can read you easily, they relax. They stop paying attention. They assume they know you. They assume you're safe. And that is exactly when you lose the advantage. Ambiguity, on the other hand, pulls people in. It forces them to lean forward, to analyze, to overthink. A simple smile becomes a riddle. A short pause becomes a warning. A missing answer becomes a storm they're waiting to interpret. Machiavelli understood that power doesn't come from being understood. It comes from being interpreted. People fear what they cannot place. They hesitate around anything they cannot label. They watch you not because they admire you, but because they don't know what you're capable of. What assumptions do people make about you? Probably the ones you allowed them to. Most people become consistent to feel stable, accepted, predictable. But once they can define you, they can defend against you. They build expectations, routines, and boundaries around the version of you they think they understand. That's why Machiavelli would shift shape. Warm today, cold tomorrow. Agreeable in one moment, distant the next. Not randomly, strategically. Every shift forces people to recalculate. Every inconsistency disrupts the patterns forming around you. A predictable person is easy to contain. An ambiguous one is impossible to pin down. Once someone can name you, they believe they own you. But if they can't label you, they can't strike. They can't aim. They can't even decide whether you're a friend or a threat. Ambiguity isn't confusion. It's power. It keeps people addicted to your presence, not because they love you, but because they don't understand you. So, don't rush to correct their assumptions. Feed them. Let the wrong version of you stay in their mind while the real you grows unseen. You don't owe anyone clarity. Sometimes the most powerful move is to leave a question unanswered and watch who becomes uncomfortable enough to reveal themselves. Law 4. Hide your intentions behind decoys. Visibility today isn't just attention, it's vulnerability. Everyone wants to showcase their grind, their routine, their progress. But every detail you reveal becomes leverage for someone else. Proof is exposure, and exposure invites sabotage. Machiavelli would never show his real blueprint. He'd show a decoy. He'd reveal a version of the plan that looked believable, but was ultimately meaningless. Ask yourself, what are you sharing that they don't need to see? What patterns have you accidentally revealed? People track your consistency more than you notice. They watch your posts, your timing, your progress updates, your routines. Once they trace your rhythm, they begin to anticipate your next step. And anything predictable can be intercepted. So, disrupt the lens. Break your own pattern. Give them movement that seems real, but means nothing. A launch here, a quote there. An update that sounds deep but reveals absolutely nothing. Meanwhile, beneath all that noise, in the quiet space no one sees, you build the real empire. Machiavelli wrote that a prince must sometimes act against loyalty or morality to protect the state not from cruelty, but from necessity. The modern version of that rule is simple. Appear noble. Move silently. Smile softly. Strike precisely. You don't need to lie. You only need to choose what not to reveal. Control the frame, but guard the film. Let them think you're behind. Let them assume you're struggling. Let them believe you've slowed down. Then, when the results arrive, they won't even understand how you got there. That's the art of asymmetry. They fight ghosts while you walk through walls. Never post the real play. Never share the real strategy. Never let the world hear the real music. Let them dance to echoes while you compose the future in a locked room. Law 5. Use imperfection as a strategic weapon. Perfection satisfies, then evaporates. People admire it briefly, then move on. What haunts them, what they remember is the fracture, the glitch, the moment of contradiction that doesn't match the image. Machiavelli would present himself perfectly. Polished voice, steady posture, calm demeanor. He'd appear confident, structured, unshakable. But then, at the exact right moment, he'd let the facade slip just once. A sudden silence that cuts the room. A sharper response than expected. A hint of something darker behind the composure. Not enough to intimidate, just enough to make people wonder what else he's capable of. That small fracture becomes unforgettable. Ask yourself, have you ever shown a crack on purpose, just to see who steps forward and who steps back? People don't chase flawlessness. They chase mystery. They chase what they cannot fully decode. They chase the shadow behind the spotlight. You never break your mask accidentally. You break it with intent. Like thunder after a long silence, you reveal that there's more beneath the surface, and not all of it is gentle. Machiavelli said a prince must appear virtuous, but be ready to act outside virtue when necessary. The key word is appear. Be the hero, the mentor, the visionary. But let one moment of chaos slip through, a controlled burn, a flash of fire, a reminder that the calm exterior is a choice, not a limitation. That fracture doesn't weaken your mask, it immortalizes it. You become unforgettable, a storm pretending to be a sky. People will spend years trying to figure out which part of you was real. Law 6. Say less, use silence as a shield. Words open doors, but they also open vulnerabilities. Every sentence reveals desire, insecurity, fear, or motive. Machiavelli understood this. He didn't speak to be heard. He spoke to conceal the map beneath the surface. Silence protects you in 3 layers. First, survival. In a world obsessed with oversharing, restraint is rebellion. When you speak less, people project more, and most of the time they're wrong. Ever told the truth and watched it later be used against you? Silence doesn't just hide the plan, it protects your identity from being dissected or distorted. Second, negotiation. Machiavelli would walk into a room, say one line, then stop. Others would rush to fill the pause, exposing motives and weaknesses. His stillness made his words heavier because they were rare. Speak too much and you reveal your rhythm. Go quiet and they drown in their own overthinking. Third, war. Silence becomes psychological pressure. A void people can't tolerate. A blank space they try desperately to fill. Is he angry? Does he know something? Why isn't he reacting? In the spiral of guessing, they expose themselves fully. Machiavelli wouldn't threaten. He'd pause. And in that pause, his enemies would self-destruct. So say less. Let silence stretch. Let it ask questions louder than words. Because when you stop explaining, they begin confessing. Law 7. Stay unreadable. Never reveal your side. The most dangerous person in any room isn't the one yelling across the table. It's the person smiling quietly beside you. The one whose loyalty you can't define. The one who never reveals which side they're truly on. Machiavelli never picked sides. He positioned himself so both sides wondered if he was with them. He wouldn't declare loyalty, and he wouldn't threaten openly. He would agree with your enemies just enough to seem harmless and support those he planned to replace just enough to keep suspicion away. Clarity creates resistance. Uncertainty puts people to sleep. Have you ever trusted someone simply because they never gave you a clear reason not to? That's how people fall into traps, not through deception, but through the absence of clarity. The moment someone labels you, they can prepare for you. But if they can't define you, they can't defend against you. You become the anomaly in their mind, friendly but unreadable, kind but never attached, supportive but not predictable. You become the calm before the collapse. Machiavelli called this becoming both the fox and the lion. The fox detects traps. The lion intimidates wolves. But real power comes from moving between the two so quickly that no one knows which part of you they're dealing with until it's too late. Praise your rival's strategy. Celebrate their promotions. Raise your glass at their victories. Let them confuse your politeness with submission. Then, when the timing is perfect, you move quietly, without drama, without warnings. Because true power doesn't roar. It removes obstacles like a blade sliding through fabric, and when the dust settles, no one knows who to blame, because the one who whispers is never the one people suspect. Law 8. Use silence to gather ammunition. You've been ignored, dismissed, laughed at for staying quiet. People assumed your silence meant weakness or insecurity. But what they didn't realize is that silence is the greatest surveillance tool ever invented. Every moment you stayed still, you were watching. Every time you stayed quiet, you were recording. Every time you let them speak, they revealed their blind spots. While they believed they knew you predictable, harmless, non-threatening, you were learning their patterns, their priorities, their insecurities, their pressure points. Now they're comfortable. Too comfortable. They believe they've already figured you out. Good. Because power doesn't introduce itself. Power waits. And when it moves, it's not loud. It's not dramatic. It's a shift in the air, a look, a silence. A subtle action that signals the end of the version of you they thought they understood. Machiavelli understood this turning point deeply. There's a line between observing and acting. Once you cross it, you're no longer studying power, you're becoming it, not as a title, not as a crown, but as influence that lives inside other people's decisions, inside their hesitation, inside their uncertainty. This next stage isn't about being seen. It's about making others see less. You don't need to stand at the front of the line. You lead from the shadows behind their assumptions. You guide through silence, through patience, through the trust they gave you freely. But from here forward, the rules change. You're not trying to survive the game. You're rewriting it. Law 9. Make people surrender without realizing they surrendered. The cleanest victory is the one your opponent walks into willingly, believing they're safe. Machiavelli never stormed the gates. He sat at the dinner table. He toasted to your success. He applauded your achievements. And while you celebrated, he was quietly pulling away the ground beneath your throne. You don't take power by force. You take it by comfort. Let them feel admired. Let them feel essential. Let them feel like they've already won. Power blinds those who believe they're untouchable. You don't challenge their position. You blend into it. You mirror their tone, reflect their confidence, support their rise. And once their guard drops completely, you move gently, surgically, without signaling intent. Have you ever applauded someone publicly while quietly becoming the person they feared privately? That's not betrayal. That's precision. If you strike too early, they resist. If you wait, they surrender before you ever touch them. They call it friendship. You call it timing. And when it's over, they won't even realize you were the one who shifted the power structure. They'll just feel the room no longer responds to them. You didn't take the power. They handed it to you. Law 10. Use absence to deepen your influence. The deepest form of control isn't domination. It's disappearance calculated, quiet, unexplained. Machiavelli didn't issue commands loudly. He offered value so subtly, so cleverly, that when he stepped back, the silence screamed louder than his presence ever did. You don't need to chain people to you. You give them something no one else can: insight, stability, clarity, relief. Maybe you break a thought loop they've struggled with for years. Maybe you solve a problem they thought was permanent. Maybe you give them peace they didn't realize they were craving. And once they lean on you, you step back. Not angrily, not dramatically, just gone. Now they're not thinking about what you gave. They're thinking about what they lost. That is the difference between influence and dependence. You didn't steal anything. They gave it to you when they built their emotional structure around your presence. Ask yourself, who still thinks about the version of you that walked away before they understood your worth? Absence becomes gravity. Their mind becomes the orbit. Every unanswered message, every missing presence, every quiet moment grows heavier. True power isn't action. It's what happens when you stop acting. Law 11. Turn favors into invisible chains. Most people give to be liked. They give for praise, for gratitude, for recognition. Machiavelli didn't care about any of that. He gave to create leverage, silent, internal, psychological debt. A small favor here. A timely solution there. A moment where he made your life easier. He didn't ask for anything in return. He let the favor sit. A favor not repaid becomes guilt. Guilt becomes obligation. Obligation becomes leverage. You start saying yes before he even asks. You offer information. You share opportunities. You pick sides. Not because you're loyal, but because you're compensating for the imbalance you feel but never acknowledge. And he would never demand repayment. He'd simply tilt his head, mention the past, let silence stretch. And that's all it takes for you to move. This isn't manipulation. This is ownership without paperwork. Ask yourself, who are you still saying yes to because they helped you once? Now you know why. Law 12. Bind people with their own disloyalty. Real loyalty doesn't come from kindness. It comes from complicity. From the moment someone crosses a moral line for you, they belong to you more than to themselves. Machiavelli understood this better than anyone. He wouldn't beg for allegiance. He'd offer a whisper, a moment, a small doorway. Tell me what they said, just between us. Can I trust you with this? And in that tiny, seemingly innocent exchange, you step across a boundary. Maybe you reveal a secret that wasn't yours. Maybe you share something sensitive. Maybe you betray someone else just a little, not out of malice, but out of the desire to be trusted, to feel included. From that moment on, you're tied to him, not because he holds power over you, but because you gave something away that you now feel obligated to protect. You're no longer just helping him. You're defending the version of yourself that made that choice. He doesn't need to mention it. He doesn't need to remind you. He doesn't need to threaten you. He simply lets the moment hang in the air, unspoken and heavy. And you replay it again and again, realizing that if he were to fall, your reputation, your alliances, your image might fall with him. This isn't friendship. This is strategic intimacy. You didn't become loyal because you loved him. You became loyal because you betrayed someone else to impress him. And now you can't afford to lose the connection that justified your decision. This is how power builds silent empires. Not with armies, but with whispered sins. 13. Destroy groups from within, not from the outside. Some walls crumble not from being attacked head-on, but from the smallest crack deep inside. Machiavelli didn't need to attack alliances. He simply needed to find the weak thread and tug gently. He wouldn't accuse. He wouldn't expose. He wouldn't confront. He'd plant doubt like a seed. Strange, she didn't defend you. You really trust him with that? I heard something. Probably nothing. That's all it takes. Doubt doesn't require proof. It only requires space. Once that seed lands, people water it with their own fear. They begin questioning alliances, reinterpreting conversations, replaying old interactions with new suspicion. The unity rots quietly, silently, until everything looks intact on the outside, but nothing holds on the inside. A raised eyebrow at the wrong time. A pause where a reassurance should have been. A single vague observation. No fingerprints, no violence, no direct sabotage. Just momentum enough to make people destroy themselves. Ever watched a group fall apart even though no one openly attacked it? That's the elegance of internal collapse. Machiavelli never needed to break the alliance. He simply let the alliance break itself. And when the dust settled, no one remembered the whisper, only the fallout. Law 14. Use psychological mirrors to control behavior. You don't need to insult someone to destabilize them, and you don't need to praise them to win their trust. All you need to do is show them a reflection they've never seen before, especially one that touches their deepest insecurity. Machiavelli wouldn't confront people directly. He'd observe quietly. He'd notice the cracks they hide, the ambitions they're ashamed of, the patterns they hope no one sees. Then, at exactly the right moment, he'd offer a single line that feels like a spotlight on the soul. Statements like, "You're bolder than most people who grew up overlooked. Impressive for someone who was ignored for so long. I admire how you learned to trust yourself after everything." Not praise, not insult, just recognition. It lands like a fingerprint on glass, subtle but permanent. When someone names what you hide, you feel exposed but also understood. And once someone believes you see their deepest flaws without judging them, they stop resisting you. They start following. Not because you inspired them, because you recognize them. And recognition is addictive. Ask yourself, who did you let close simply because they articulated something you thought no one could see? Now you understand the mechanism. Law 15. Influence without touching, let others act for you. The most feared man is never the one swinging the sword. It's the one who orchestrates the entire conflict without lifting a finger. Machiavelli never dirtied his hands. He didn't need to. Power is not in the strike. It's in the design of the situation that produces the strike. He didn't remove threats directly. He created pressure. He let tension simmer. He let egos collide. He'd whisper small suggestions, never instructions. Strange how they always interrupt you, isn't it? Imagine what you could do without him slowing you down. You'd lead better if you weren't under someone else's shadow. Then he'd walk away and say nothing more. No orders, no encouragement, no manipulation on the surface. And when someone finally acted, removed a rival, made a bold move, started a conflict, no one blamed him. They blamed the person holding the knife. That is the beauty of invisible influence. When chaos erupts, everyone sees the actors. No one sees the author. Law 16. Use silence as interrogation. In every room, the one who speaks least collects the most information. Machiavelli didn't pressure people for answers. He didn't interrogate or demand explanations. He simply invited silence and let others collapse into it. Most people fear silence. They fear what you might be thinking. They fear the unknown in your eyes. So they fill the void with words they should have kept to themselves. He'd say one line, then stop. No nod, no smile, no reaction. And in that unbearable stillness, the other person would start talking, trying to decode his expression, trying to justify themselves, trying to earn back clarity. Have you ever walked away from a conversation thinking, why did I reveal so much? Why did I say that? Because silence is a vacuum. It pulls confessions out of people without force. The quieter you become, the louder their imagination becomes. And imagination always exaggerates. That exaggeration works in your favor. So don't react. Don't rush to respond. Don't fill the air just to relieve their discomfort. Let silence stretch. Let them unravel. Law 17. Be unpredictable enough to create hesitation. Predictability gives people comfort, and comfort gives them confidence. Once someone knows your patterns, how you react, how you forgive, how you respond, they can manipulate you, trap you, or prepare for you. Machiavelli refused to be predictable. He'd forgive a major mistake one day, then go completely silent the next. He'd show warmth in one meeting, then freeze the room without warning in another. Not to create chaos, but to create hesitation. Hesitation is paralysis. Paralysis is control. When people don't know how you'll respond, they move carefully. They overthink. They shrink their plans. They rehearse their words. They silence their ambitions just to avoid triggering a reaction they can't anticipate. This is how you become the psychological high ground, not by intimidation, but by unpredictability. Who is afraid of you not because of what you have done, but because they don't know what you might do? That is the essence of strategic fear. You don't need to be explosive. You just need to be unreadable. Be consistent in your values, but flexible in your expression. Stable in your intent, but unpredictable in your rhythm. Fear doesn't come from power. It comes from uncertainty. Law 18. Become the standard people follow even when you're not present. Machiavelli didn't chase status. He became the reference point. He became the invisible metric people calibrated themselves against. Not through speeches, not through leadership, not through domination, but through precision, discipline, and the consistency of his internal structure. When you operate with clarity, discipline, and a sharp internal logic, you become essential. People depend on your thinking. They rely on your stability. They borrow your structure. Eventually, your absence creates friction. People hesitate because they remember how you would have moved. They second-guess themselves because they fear disappointing the version of you in their heads. That's influence without presence. That's legacy without announcement. Ask yourself, who still adjusts their behavior based on your standards, even when you're not around? You didn't become a person in their life. You became a voice in their mind. Law 19. Create fear without threats. Let silence do the work. Threats are noise, and noise gives people time to prepare. Machiavelli never said he would destroy you. He let the possibility sit there, unspoken, unresolved, unanswered. Real fear doesn't come from what is declared. It comes from what is withheld. The moment you describe your revenge, you shrink it. You make it measurable, predictable, manageable. But when you go quiet, people imagine every possible version, and imagination is always worse than reality. Have you ever scared someone simply by not reacting? One canceled meeting, one unread message, one sudden exit from the room, and suddenly they begin spiraling, replaying every interaction, scanning your silence for clues. The battlefield shifts inside their mind. They manage themselves. They walk on eggshells. They apologize for things you never mentioned. This is psychological pressure without motion, the kind of influence that multiplies when you remove yourself. Let their imagination write the script. Let their anxiety build the consequences. Let your silence become the threat they can't defend against. Law 20. Wait for your moment. Revenge belongs to timing, not anger. Weak men react instantly. Strong men wait. They let time sharpen the blade. Machiavelli never struck back while the insult was fresh. That only validates the offender. Instead, he let the moment breathe. He smiled. He stepped back. He watched. And while his enemies celebrated, he prepared. Patience turns revenge into fate. It blindsides instead of bruising. It rewrites the narrative instead of reacting to it. Ask yourself, who thinks they got away with something because you stayed silent? Good. Let them believe the storm has passed. Let them grow comfortable, confident, careless. Because revenge delivered too soon feels like retaliation. Revenge delivered at the perfect moment feels like destiny. You don't just end their win, you stain it. You turn their moment of triumph into the reason they collapse. And the most Machiavellian part? You don't even stay to watch. You've already moved on, untouched, unapologetic, unreachable. Law 21. Become a system, not a person. People can be attacked, replaced, erased, forgotten. Systems cannot. Machiavelli didn't want followers. He wanted frameworks. He didn't want to be loved. He wanted his way of thinking embedded so deeply that even his enemies relied on it. You do this by building methods, structures, and patterns that solve problems in ways no one else can replicate. When your logic becomes the architecture others depend on, removing you becomes impossible. Ask yourself, if you disappeared today, would your method still guide decisions? If the answer is no, you're still operating as a person, not an ecosystem. A person leaves. A system remains. A system outlives the creator. A system becomes the invisible backbone others use to succeed. That is real power. Influence that functions without your presence. Law 22. Become the unspeakable, the shadow they never name. The highest form of power is not being respected, not being feared, not being admired. It is becoming unspeakable. The name people avoid saying. The example they reference without ever mentioning the source. The myth they warn others about through stories, not labels. Machiavelli didn't want applause. He wanted silence when his name surfaced. He wanted posture shifts, uneasy glances, a sudden change in tone. Not because he was evil, but because he became a consequence, a standard, a cautionary tale. You don't trend, you haunt. You become the warning wrapped in a memory. Ask yourself, who do people talk about in fragments, afraid to say their name? That is the level you aim for, where your legacy becomes a shadow that shapes decisions long after you're gone. Law 23. Build stillness inside yourself. Let silence become identity. Power doesn't seek validation. Power doesn't chase applause. Power doesn't explain. It observes. It studies. It builds quietly, patiently, precisely. Real power is stillness. The moment you stop performing for approval, your presence becomes heavier. Your silence becomes intentional. Your decisions become unquestionable. People begin adjusting to you. Rooms shift around you. Your absence holds weight. Your presence feels like a standard. And when you finally move, no one knows why, no one knows how, but they feel it. If you've made it this far, something in you is already changing. That stillness inside isn't doubt. It's the death of the version of you that needed to be liked. The version that over-explained. The version that wanted to be understood. That version is gone. Now something colder is rising. Sharper, calmer, more controlled, more precise. You don't need permission. You don't need applause. You don't need validation. You only need to be unforgettable. Let them underestimate you. Let them talk over you. Let them ignore your silence. Because when you finally move, you won't have to announce anything. You'll have already won before they even realize a game was being played. Ask yourself one last question. Which rule in this journey woke something up inside you? Which moment cut deeper than the rest? Share it below, or stay silent. Silence finishes what power begins. In the end, power isn't about dominance, manipulation, or control. It's about clarity. The clarity to move with intention while the world chases noise. You're not here to impress anyone. You're here to become someone they can't predict, can't replace, and can't forget. Let silence be your shield. Let strategy be your voice. Let discipline carve the path no one sees until it's too late to stop you. The world rewards those who understand perception, who move quietly, who build without applause. So step into that version of yourself, the one who watches more than he speaks, who acts with precision, who rises without permission. Your transformation doesn't require an announcement. It requires a decision, and you've already made it by reaching this moment. Now move.